Welcome into Building the Board. In this episode, we're going to talk about linebackers, a position group with some uncertainty for the Cowboys leading up to the draft, which means they might have to address this position early on. I'm Danny Surek, and I'm going to bring Kyle Yeomans up to the big board with me. Come on up here, Kyle.
Absolutely. You said small concern. It may be bigger than that.
We're going to get into that. It makes sense to have some concern for the linebackers for the Cowboys because they have suffered numerous injuries over the year. Leighton Vander Esch has dealt with collarbone and neck issues. Jalen Smith is coming off his worst year in the league, and Joe Thomas was the linebacker who really filled in the absence of those players, and he signed with the Houston Texans throughout free agency. Kyle, how concerned are you with the status of the linebacker position group heading into the draft?
So, of course, the metaphor of a panic button is used a lot in sports. I'm not pressing the panic button yet, but I'm in the room. I'm looking at it. It's right there because you're one injury, one mistake away from really being in trouble at the linebacker spot. You mentioned the names that are already there, of course, with Jalen Smith, Leighton Vander Esch. You bring in a guy like Keanu Neal, who's going to play a little bit of linebacker, but even he is a bit of a project. He's somebody who's played the majority of his time as a strong safety. He's going to play that hybrid position in Dan Quinn's defense. I think overall, the linebacker position has a huge question mark over it. And of course, I've said this as well, but losing Joe Thomas hurts a little bit more as well because that was your depth. That was your safety net. Now your safety net is Francis Bernard. And I think really we all can kind of look at it and say an undrafted free agent is not exactly what you want in that safety net at such a key role in this defense. So I think the linebacker class is going to have to work out in favor of the Cowboys.
So if you're looking at that panic button in the linebacker room, that tells me you've looked at some day one level prospects for the draft. Who do you have your eye on?
Sure. I mean, there's a couple of day one guys that really get you excited. It's just whether or not does it get you excited at the 10th overall pick. Micah Parsons is at the top of my board, but it's not by a whole lot over Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah out of Notre Dame. So you've got the Penn State linebacker in front of some of those premium positions like cornerback, like offensive tackle at 10. That's the debate that's been raging amongst Cowboys Nation and really amongst Draft Nation throughout the course of the last couple of years is that linebacker spot worth a top 10 pick? I say no. A lot of people say yes. I'm cool with that. There's always going to be a little discrepancy there, but there are definitely some prospects to look at. You could also look at maybe Zaven Collins. I know he's up on the board here. There's been kind of late risers in the draft class that I know day 2 or day 3 that'll be available for the Cowboys as well.
If 10 might be too rich for a linebacker, who are some more of those day 2 and 3 linebackers that you like?
See, and that's the sweet spot. That's what's good about this draft class for the Cowboys because there are plenty of guys. There's a reason there's 4 guys up on the board here. You look at Jamin Davis out of Kentucky. I mentioned late risers. This is a guy who was barely on my board. He was in the top 15 barely prior to the pro days, but slowly he's been climbing up draft boards, and he could potentially sneak his way into the first round or maybe even early second. He's a guy I know the Cowboys are very infatuated with. Nick Bolton, who's a local product, played at Frisco Lone Star, who actually played in the building across the hallway from where we're recording right now. Fantastic linebacker out of Missouri, somebody who I think the Cowboys would love to have because he finishes plays, he plays hard, he's got a good head on his shoulders, and he's got that football IQ that you can see on film enough to really get you excited at the linebacker spot.
Let's take a look back at day 1 prospect Micah Parsons out of Penn State. Dave Hellman's going to give us a closer look at Parsons. Dave?
Thanks, y'all. And guess what? If I've learned anything in my 8 years covering the NFL draft, it's that if you're going to be a top-tier pick at linebacker, you better be athletic and you better be able to affect the passing game. And that's what we're going to try to figure out with Micah Parsons. Hint, he can. Check this out. Micah Parsons, so good the guy didn't even play the 2020 season. That's obviously a theme with COVID-19. Last time he did play, 109 tackles. Oh, to go with 5 sacks. Sounds awfully intriguing for a team that's had a hard time getting to the quarterback. We're going to show you not just some of his best plays, but from a game that happened right here at AT&T Stadium. And trust me, he knows it. He is ready to play here again. I promise you. Let's go to the tape. Again, athleticism. If you're going to be a top 10 pick at linebacker, can you move all over the field? Micah Parsons definitely can. Teams tend to juice up their pro day numbers. Dude ran a 4.39. Even if that's slow, he's got the speed to move sideline to sideline. You're going to see it again here. And also his instincts. Memphis tries to get cute with a reverse. Parsons ain't buying it. He sees the receiver coming. Gets there with bad intentions. That's what you love to see. Nice little celebration for good measure. Here's my favorite part. You think about Devon White, what he did for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, getting to the passer, again, affecting the passing game. Not a whole lot to do here. Nobody blocks him, but he gets to the quarterback, and forces a fumble. If you're talking about a guy that can get 5+ sacks from the inside linebacker position, that's an asset that I can work with. Micah Parsons can do that. And just for good measure, again, top 10 pick, you don't want this guy coming off the field on third down. Here's Micah Parsons reading the quarterback, dropping, sees the throw. Love to see him make that catch, but at least you know he can work in coverage. Very enticing. You're talking about a guy, again, he can rush the passer, he can drop in coverage, he can move sideline to sideline. If you're going to use a pick on a linebacker at 10 overall, he definitely fits the bill.
Yeah.
If the Cowboys do use their 10th pick on a linebacker, I mean, what is the best case scenario that you would feel comfortable doing that? Because Parsons is clearly a top 10 pick with his skill, but you guys have both kind of let on that might be too rich for the Cowboys compared to their other needs.
I think you asked me this question and I kind of laughed, and that's the situation would be as if they get wiped out. And it's really pick the first linebacker taken if I had to guess. It's about positional value. And again, I need my linebacker to affect the passing game because that's everything. And what's more important? A linebacker who can maybe do some of that, or a cornerback who's going to lock down half of the field, or an offensive tackle who's going to keep Dak Prescott upright. I just think it's about positional value. It's not a knock on Micah at all. You
also think about what you want to work out. If you're drafting Micah Parsons, that says, okay, we failed at the linebacker spot. We need a top 10 pick. We need to throw another really, really talented player into the mix. You still want Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith to turn into the players that you saw in 2018, whenever Leighton Vander Esch was a first-round pick, whenever Jalen Smith was a second-round pick. So you've spent premium picks at that position before. You've gotten burnt in the past. You can't necessarily afford to get burnt again, especially when at the positions worth the value, there are prospects that are going to come in and play really well for you immediately.
If the Cowboys do use an early pick on a linebacker, how much of that would be just based on the skill of the player, and how much of that would be because they are worried about the health of the linebackers they have on the roster right now?
I think that's a great point, because I think it does have to do with the health. If Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith were 100% and they were playing like they were in 2018, this wouldn't even be a need on the board. You would look at depth maybe later on, like I said, with losing guys like Joe Thomas, and of course we know about Sean Lee. I think overall there's going to be it would be a stigma to go back in and have a top 10 pick at the linebacker spot. And I think putting that out there, it means that you know that you have to move on from one of those guys at linebacker.
It is a really unique situation, though, because you have Leighton and you have Jalen. But guess what? Right after the draft, the Cowboys have to make a decision on Leighton's fifth-year option. They have until early May to pick it up. If they don't, he's a free agent next spring. Jalen Smith, we've covered it. Disappointing. The team opted to hold on to him this year. I don't think that's a bad decision. But if he doesn't improve next year, you're stuck in a spot where you've got to make that decision again. And maybe he's not on the team in 2022. That's something you have to consider if you don't see improvement. So I agree with Kyle. It's an indictment on what you have if you spend a top 10 pick. But if you're not feeling good about it, you might have to do what you have to do to reinforce that position. And I just said I would prefer not to draft him, but again, Micah Parsons has the athleticism to fit that bill, absolutely.
I think you and I are on the same page whenever it comes to we would rather not have him as the pick, but if he is the pick, you can make it work.
I can make peace with it. It's not my first preference, but I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time being bummed out about it.
Same thing.
That's the breakdown on the linebacker position leading up to the draft on this episode of Building the Board. For Dave Helman and Kyle Yeomans, I'm Danny Surratt. Thanks for tuning in.